The church was abuzz with wedding guests, but whispers turned sharp when a frail man in a tattered suit appeared. Did she really invite him? Moments later, the doors burst open, and 12 soldiers in crisp uniforms marched in, saluting the bride. A secret she'd kept for years was about to unravel, a daily act of kindness that would leave everyone stunned. The morning sun had barely crept over the horizon when Clara Bennett arrived at Hearthstone Cafe in Portland, Oregon, her apron already dusted with flour. At 32, Clara had spent the last 7 years as the cafe's head barista and baker, her hands deftly crafting lattes and her signature lemon scones that drew crowds from across the city. But beyond her talent with coffee and pastries, Clara was known among her small circle for something far more personal, a quiet ritual that unfolded each day at dawn. Every morning, after the first batch of scones emerged golden from the oven, Clara would wrap one carefully in parchment paper, pour a cup of black coffee into a to-go cup, and slip out the cafe's back door. She'd place the items on a weathered wooden bench near the corner bus stop, alongside a handwritten note, wishing you a gentle start to your day. The recipient was always the same, an elderly man with a grizzled beard and a threadbare jacket, who sat silently on the bench, never begging, never speaking, just watching the world pass by. In 7 years, Clara had never asked his name, and he'd never offered it. Their connection was unspoken, a daily exchange of kindness and acknowledgement. Her co-workers at Hearthstone noticed, though, and their reactions were rarely kind. "She's throwing away profit," muttered Ethan, the line cook, as he flipped pancakes one morning. "One day, he'll start demanding more," predicted Sophie, the cashier, her tone laced with judgment. Clara heard the whispers but let them slide, her focus on the dough she kneaded or the espresso she pulled. She wasn't doing this for approval. She was doing it because she saw a person where others saw a problem. 3 months ago, the cafe had been bought by a new owner, Mr. Hargrove, a stern man obsessed with efficiency. During Clara's annual review, he'd raised the issue. "Your generosity is commendable," he'd said, choosing his words carefully. "But some customers feel uneasy seeing a homeless man so close to the cafe. Perhaps you could donate to a shelter instead." Clara had nodded politely, but the next morning, she arrived 15 minutes earlier, leaving the food before anyone else showed up. She thought she'd been discreet until a new server, Mia, spotted her one morning and gossiped loudly to a regular, "She's been feeding that guy for years, every single day." The customer, a middle-aged woman with a pinched expression, shook her head. "What a shame. Thinks she's saving the world, doesn't she?" Clara, wiping down the counter, pretended not to hear, but the words stung. Not because she cared about their judgment, but because they couldn't see what she did. A man who deserved dignity, not dismissal. Clara's mother, Diane, had always called her too tender, a trait she'd warned against when Clara got engaged to Daniel, a paramedic who shared her quiet compassion. "You're always giving too much," Diane had said, her tone a mix of love and exasperation. "You'll burn yourself out." But Clara knew something her mother didn't. Kindness wasn't about what you got back. It was about seeing the people others ignored. She'd never spoken to the elderly man beyond a nod or a fleeting smile, but their silent connection ran deep. One foggy morning in November, she'd noticed him shivering, his hands trembling as he held the coffee cup. Without a second thought, she'd placed her own knit scarf, a faded green thing her grandmother had made, beside the scone. The next day, she found a note on the bench, written in shaky handwriting on the back of her usual napkin. "Thank you for seeing me." Clara tucked the note into her wallet, pulling it out on days when the world felt particularly harsh. As her wedding to Daniel approached, Clara ordered the cake from Hearthstone, inviting her co-workers to the ceremony at the small community church downtown. Daniel teased her about her guest list. "You invited half the city, Clara." But he loved her inclusive heart, one of the many reasons she'd fallen for him. 3 days before the wedding, a plain envelope arrived at the church, addressed simply to the bride, Clara Bennett. Inside was a card with elegant handwriting. "I will attend not for celebration, but to repay a debt." There was no signature, no return address, and Clara puzzled over it, wondering if it was from one of Daniel's paramedic colleagues or a distant cousin. The morning of her wedding, Clara was a bundle of nerves and joy as she prepared in the church's tiny bridal room. Through the window she watched guests arrive, family, friends, co-workers in their Sunday best. Then she saw him standing awkwardly at the church entrance, the elderly man from the bus stop, now in a worn but neatly pressed suit, his shoes polished despite their cracked leather. His grizzled beard was trimmed, and for the first time Clara could see his face clearly, lined with hardship, but holding a quiet dignity. Whispers rippled through the guests. "Who invited him?" One hissed. "Is he here for a handout?" another muttered. Clara's heart sank at their words, but she didn't hesitate. Gathering her ivory gown, she rushed from the bridal room, ignoring the gasps of her wedding planner, Elise, and the schedule they'd meticulously planned. She crossed the foyer in a flurry of white, her veil trailing behind her, and enveloped the man in a warm embrace, heedless of the tears threatening her makeup. "I've seen you every morning since 2018, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He smiled, a genuine warmth breaking through his weathered features. "And I've felt human every one of those mornings because of you," he replied, his voice steady and deeper than she'd expected. As Clara linked her arm through the elderly man's to guide him inside, Elise hurried over, her clipboard clutched tightly. "Clara, the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. Who is this?" Before Clara could answer, the sound of engines pulling up outside the church drew everyone's attention. The double doors swung open with precision, and the room fell silent. 12. Soldiers in full-dress uniforms entered, their navy blue coats adorned with medals, their white gloves pristine, their steps synchronized with military precision. Guests froze, a champagne flute slipping from someone's hand and shattering on the hardwood floor, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. The lead soldier, a major with the name tag Hawkins, stepped forward, coming to attention before Clara and rendering a sharp salute. "On behalf of Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Infantry, I am here to honor the woman who sustained a hero for 7 years," Major Hawkins announced, his voice resonating through the church. Clara stood frozen, her hand still on the elderly man's arm, her mind racing. Murmurs rippled through the guests, confusion giving way to curiosity. Major Hawkins turned slightly, gesturing to the man beside Clara. "This is Sergeant Henry Tate, a soldier who saved 11 lives during a firefight in Kandahar in 2005. After losing his wife and son to a house fire in 2017, he withdrew from society, choosing to live without his military benefits or revealing his identity." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Guests who had whispered moments ago now stared in disbelief, their judgment replaced by shame. A younger soldier stepped forward, presenting Clara with a shadow box containing a medal and a faded photograph. The image showed a younger Henry Tate carrying a wounded soldier through a smoke-filled street, with a younger Major Hawkins visible in the background, his face grim with pain. "Sergeant Tate carried me 3 miles under enemy fire, after I was hit by an IED, Hawkins explained, his voice steady but thick with emotion. He went back for 10 more soldiers that day, despite taking shrapnel to his shoulder. His actions earned him the Bronze Star, which he never claimed. Hawkins paused, his gaze softening as he looked at Clara. "If not for him, I wouldn't be here. And if not for you, Miss Bennett, he might not have survived to see this day." Clara's tears fell freely now, smudging her makeup as she turned to Henry, seeing him anew. "I had no idea," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That was intentional," Henry replied softly. "I didn't want to be a hero anymore. After losing my family, I couldn't bear the weight of people's expectations. I just wanted to disappear. But you—" His voice cracked and he steadied himself. "You never asked who I was. You never demanded my story. You just gave me a reason to keep going, day after day." The soldiers had formed an honor guard, lining the aisle from the entrance to the altar. Major Hawkins addressed the guests, his gaze sweeping the room. Ms. Bennett didn't know she was helping a decorated soldier. She simply helped a man in need, day after day, year after year, without recognition or reward. His eyes lingered on those who had whispered earlier, their faces flushed with guilt. In the Army, we say, "Leave no soldier behind." Clara Bennett, who never wore a uniform, understood this better than many who do. One of Clara's co-workers, Sophie, stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "I work with Clara." "At the cafe," she said, her voice trembling. "She comes in early every day, pays for the extra ingredients herself, just to make sure he had fresh food. She choked on a sob. "We mocked her for it." Another guest stood, overcome with emotion. "This isn't just a wedding. It's a military honor ceremony." Henry turned to Clara, his weathered hands taking hers. "I came today to give you the only gift I have left. My presence, my truth, my gratitude. I knew about your wedding because I overheard you talking to a customer at the cafe. I hope you don't mind that I reached out to some old friends." Clara smiled through her tears. "This is the most beautiful gift I could imagine." Daniel, the groom, who had watched the scene unfold with awe, approached Henry, extending his hand. "Sir, I'd be honored if you'd join our ceremony. Maybe walk Clara down the aisle?" Henry nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "It would be my privilege." As the ceremony began, the soldiers stood at attention, their presence a solemn backdrop to the vows. Clara's mother, Diane, wept openly, whispering to Nora, "I was wrong about her giving too much. Look what it brought her." The guests, who had judged Henry, now clapped as he walked Clara down the aisle, their perceptions shattered by the truth of his heroism. The wedding was a blur of joy and revelation, but its impact lingered long after the last guest left. Clara and Daniel honeymooned in a small cabin on the Oregon coast, but their conversations kept returning to Henry and the soldiers. "I can't stop thinking about him," Clara admitted one evening, sitting by the fire. "All those years, I never knew his story." Daniel took her hand, his eyes warm. "You didn't need to know his story to help him. That's what makes you, you." He paused, then added, "But I think we can do more, for him and others like him." Clara nodded, an idea already forming, a way to honor Henry's quiet courage and extend the kindness that had brought them to this moment. When they returned to Portland, Clara didn't go back to Hearthstone Cafe. The new owner's disapproval and her co-workers' past judgment had left a bitter taste, and she knew her path lay elsewhere. Instead, she and Daniel used their wedding gift money, along with a small loan, to start a program called The Silent Plate, a breakfast service for homeless veterans in their neighborhood. They rented a modest space near the cafe, a former diner with chipped paint and creaky floors, and transformed it into a haven. A wooden sign above the door bore carved words, "One meal can nourish a life the world has forgotten." There were no grand announcements, no press releases, just Clara and Daniel, cooking simple meals of oatmeal, eggs, and fresh bread, serving anyone who walked in with a nod and a smile. Veterans began to trickle in, drawn by word of mouth, a place where they could eat without questions, without judgment. Clara kept Henry's note framed above the counter. "Thank you for seeing me." Below it, she added her own message. "Every person at this table has a story worth hearing." Henry didn't appear at the silent plate after the wedding, but every few weeks, Clara received a postcard from different cities, Seattle, Denver, Chicago, each with the same message. Every meal is a salute. Thank you, Clara. Major Hawkins had shared that Henry was finally using his VA benefits, receiving medical care and counseling for the trauma that had haunted him since losing his family. The soldiers had helped him secure housing and reconnect with the military community he'd left behind. Clara threw herself into the work, but it wasn't without challenges. Some mornings, supplies ran low and volunteers were scarce. One particularly cold January day, a pipe burst in the diner, flooding the kitchen. Clara sat on the floor, mopping up water, tears mixing with the mess. "What if we can't keep this going?" she asked Daniel, her voice trembling. He knelt beside her, his hands steady on her shoulders. "We'll keep going because it matters. You kept going for Henry for 7 years. You didn't give up then, and we won't now." His words steadied her, and she thought of her wedding day, the soldiers standing at attention for her small act of kindness. It was all the motivation she needed. The silent plate began to grow, not through publicity, but through the veterans who spread the word. A man named Carl, a Vietnam vet with a limp, became a regular, sharing stories of his service over coffee. A woman named Marla, who'd served in Desert Storm, brought her sketchbook, drawing portraits of the others as they ate. Clara listened to their stories, her heart swelling with each one, knowing she was giving them more than food. She was giving them a space to be seen. On their first wedding anniversary, Clara and Daniel arrived at the silent plate to find a surprise waiting. The 12 soldiers from their wedding day stood outside the diner, this time in civilian clothes, each holding a single daisy. Major Hawkins stepped forward, a grin on his face. "We'll be taking shifts volunteering here," he announced. "This honor isn't one we'll let fade." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she hugged each soldier, their presence a reminder of the ripple effect of her kindness. The soldiers' involvement brought new energy to the silent plate, their discipline and camaraderie inspiring the veterans, who came to eat. Hawkins shared that Henry had settled in a small town in Montana, where he was helping other veterans navigate their benefits, his own healing journey a testament to Clara's impact. The diner became a sanctuary for veterans across Portland, a place where they could find not just a meal but a community. Carl started a weekly storytelling circle, where veterans shared their experiences, their voices growing stronger with each session. Marla's sketches were displayed on the walls, a gallery of resilience and survival. Clara and Daniel worked tirelessly, often late into the night, but the exhaustion was worth it for the lives they touched. One evening, a local journalist, Emma Klein, visited the silent plate after hearing about it from a veteran. She requested an interview, her camera crew already setting up. Clara hesitated, then declined politely. "This isn't about me," she said, gesturing to the veterans eating at the tables. "Talk to them. Their stories are what matter." Emma nodded, spending hours listening to Carl, Marla, and others, her article later bringing more volunteers to the diner. But not everyone understood Clara's mission. Some locals complained about the vagrant presence near their businesses, and a few anonymous letters demanded the diner close. Clara felt the weight of their disapproval, but Daniel stood by her, his paramedic instincts kicking in. "We don't stop helping because it's hard," he said, kissing her forehead. "We keep going because it's right." On tough days, Clara would look at Henry's framed note, remembering the soldier's salute on her wedding day. It was a reminder that small acts could have enormous impact, that kindness could bridge even the deepest divides. Daniel understood this too, his own work as a paramedic teaching him that heroism wasn't always loud. It was in the quiet consistency of showing up, day after day. 2 years after the wedding, the silent plate had become a cornerstone of the Portland veteran community. Veterans from across the state knew it as a place of refuge, where they could eat without shame, share their stories, or simply sit in silence. Clara and Daniel expanded the space, adding a small garden out back where veterans could grow herbs and vegetables, a project Carl spearheaded with pride. Clara kept in touch with Henry through his postcards, each one a small victory in his journey. On the second anniversary of the silent plate, a package arrived from Montana. A hand-carved wooden plaque with the words, "Thank you for seeing me," etched into it. Signed by Henry. Clara hung it beside his original note, a symbol of the bond. That had started it all. The soldiers continued their volunteer shifts, their presence a quiet honor to Clara's work. Major Hawkins became a mentor to younger veterans, helping them find jobs and housing, his leadership a gift to the community. The diner's walls were now covered with Marla's sketches, each one a testament to the lives that had found solace there. Clara's mother, Diane, who had once worried about her daughter's giving nature, became a regular volunteer. Her hands, now kneading dough alongside Clara's. "I see it now," Diane said one morning, her eyes soft. "You didn't just feed a man, you fed a whole world." Clara smiled, hugging her mother, grateful for the understanding that had taken years to bloom. The silent plate faced challenges, funding shortages, harsh winters, societal pushback, but Clara and Daniel never wavered. They remembered the veterans, stories, the soldier's salute, Henry's gratitude. It was enough to keep them going, to keep them serving, to keep them seeing the invisible. One evening, as they closed the diner, Daniel pulled Clara into a hug. "When I married you, I got more than a wife," he said, his voice warm. "I got a mission, a family, a purpose." Clara laughed, resting her head on his chest. "The best kind of family, the kind you choose, and the kind that chooses you, back." The silent plate wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about the quiet power of kindness, the way a single scone and a cup of coffee could save a life, could remind a soldier of his worth, could bring a community together. Clara didn't need to know Henry's story to help him. She saw a person, and that was enough. Through her small act, a hero was preserved, a unit of soldiers was inspired, and a legacy of compassion was born. Call to support. If Clara and Henry's story moved you, please support our channel. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us share more stories of quiet heroism and kindness. Join our community, and let's keep seeing the aid in them.